Jiro Sato had been visiting the tranquil world of the Huffers for several months now, as part of a cultural exchange program between Earth and the alien society. The Huffers were a gentle, pacifist race, more focused on pursuits of art and philosophy than anything as brutish as warfare. Their cities were bucolic utopias, with winding walkways between vibrantly colored plant sculptures and grand spired buildings that seemed to shimmer with harmonic resonance. The very air seemed to thrum with the meditative calm that the Huffers naturally exuded. Of course, even in this apparent paradise, there were threats that loomed. The Huffers lived in perpetual fear of their warlike neighbors, the Squintons. Burly and aggressive, the reptilian Squintons would occasionally try to bully or subjugate the Huffers, seeing their pacifism as weakness to be exploited. For the most part, the Huffers avoided provoking the Squintons, and conflicts had been rare for the last few stellar cycles. But on this particular cycle, alarms began to sound across the Huffer cities. Jiro looked up from the ceremonial meditation he had been observing to see panicked Huffers fleeing in terror. Within moments, the streets were swarming with Squinton warriors, their bulky armored forms unloading from landing craft as they began to rampage through the city. Laser blasts and screams rang out as the brutal invasion commenced. "What's going on?" Jiro asked a nearby Huffer who was cowering behind a decorative hedge. "The Squintons. They've launched another attack," the alien cried in its buzzing language. "We're all doomed this time." Jiro felt a lump in his throat seeing the once serene city descending into chaos and violence. As an emissary from Earth, he had been strictly instructed to avoid any interference with the planet's affairs. But he couldn't just stand by and watch the massacre of innocents, could he? The sound of frightened shrieks drew his attention to a nearby dwelling. To his horror, he saw a group of Squinton soldiers blasting into the home, before emerging with a terrified Huffer family, two parents trying to shield their multiple offspring. The invading troops simply opened fire. That was when Jiro's decision became clear. Screw the rules of non-interference. He may have been just one human, but he wasn't about to let this atrocity happen right in front of him. Jiro raced back to the small dwelling he had been provided during his stay on the Huffer planet. He swiftly gathered up the meager supplies he had brought with him from Earth: a standard-issue sidearm, a compact semi-automatic rifle, and a few combat knives. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Strapping on the body armor that was part of his expeditionary gear, Jiro checked over his weapons one last time. He knew he was about to charge headlong into the middle of an alien war zone, hopelessly outgunned and outnumbered. But the thought of that family being so brutally cut down ate at him. He had to try. Bursting out of the dwelling, Jiro saw the squad of Squinton soldiers barking orders at each other in their guttural language as they prepared to execute the captured Huffers. Time seemed to slow as Jiro pulled his sidearm and started squeezing off rapid shots with mechanically precise aim. The first few Squintons went down before they even realized the human was a threat. Then all hell broke loose. Jiro was a blur of motion, his armored form rolling and weaving through the chaos as he unleashed his deadly disciplined barrage. Laser blasts whizzed past him as the Squinton troops tried in vain to blow him away, their larger weapons proving clumsy and inaccurate compared to Jiro's efficient gunplay. Within seconds, the human had cut their numbers in half as alien bodies collapsed, thick fluid leaking from grievous wounds. Roaring in fury and fear, the remaining Squinton warriors charged at Jiro in a desperate frenzy. Time to go to hand. Wielding his knives in a whirling dervish, Jiro was an unstoppable whirlwind of finely honed human destruction. Limbs were severed, arteries opened in spraying arcs, as Jiro slipped between the lumbering extraterrestrials with unnatural speed and precision. These aliens had never experienced the merciless intensity of human close combat training. Within moments, the last Squinton fell at Jiro's feet in a clatter of blades and shredded armor. He stood there panting, covered in garish purple blood as he surveyed the carnage around him. The Huffer family cowered together, staring up at their human savior with a mix of awe and terror in their large, unblinking eyes. All around, crowds of aliens from both races had gathered, utterly transfixed by the display of a single human warrior slaughtering an entire squad designed for conquest. Jiro knew he had just violated every protocol in the book by interfering so dramatically in the planet's affairs. but he had gotten the result he wanted. He sheathed his blades, wiped his brow, and gave a reassuring nod to the traumatized Huffers. "Don't worry, it's over now," he said, knowing they couldn't possibly understand his words. "I'm not going to let anything happen to your family." A hush fell over the gathered crowd as Jiro stood defiantly amid the scattered Squintin bodies. The attacking warriors who remained had already turned and fled in panic at witnessing the humans' unholy onslaught. Slowly, a chorus of eerie chirping and buzzing arose from the onlooking Huffers. Jiro realized it was their form of applause, of reverence. They carefully approached the lone human, bowing their delicate fringed heads in a gesture of gratitude. "Human, you saved us," one of the aliens spoke in its resonant language. "The Squintins would have slaughtered us all if not for your bravery." Jiro nodded solemnly. "I just did what any decent person would do." I couldn't allow that. He trailed off, unable to find the words to describe the atrocity he had prevented. More Huffers gathered around, gingerly touching Jiro's armor and weapons with obvious fascination and respect. Whispers and chirps spread rapidly as they realized this was no mere anecdote or rumor. They had just seen for themselves why humanity was feared and respected throughout the galaxy. For even one human, when driven to the brink by a heinous act, could summon forth an unholy tsunami of primal violence that no alien force could possibly withstand. From the edges of the crowd, the remaining Squintins watched in sullen shock. Their proud warmongering race, bred for interstellar conquest, had been humbled by this unassuming human. A lone, isolated specimen who had displayed the intensity and brutality they had only glimpsed in terrifying legends. "Listen up," Squintin's Jiro shouted out, projecting his voice across the stunned assemblage. "You need to understand what you've seen here today. This was just a tiny taste of what humans are capable of when cornered. We will use any means necessary to protect the innocent from those who would do them harm." He pulled a knife and let it glint menacingly in the daylight. "So I suggest you go back to your homeworld, lick your wounds, and think very carefully about testing humanity's resolve again. Because next time I guarantee it won't be just one of us you'll face." The grizzled Squintin commander slowly nodded, seeing the truth burn in the human's determined eyes. Signaling his scattered troops, they slunk back to their invasion craft and began a hasty retreat. From that cycle onwards, tales would spread of the human warrior's awesome display of power. On worlds across the galaxies, the legend would be committed to history, the story of why you never, ever earn humanity's wrath through unforgivable acts. For even one human is truly a terrifying force to be reckoned with. Back on Earth, the extraordinary events on the Huffer world were scrutinized and analyzed. Jiro would no doubt face harsh disciplinary consequences for his breach of the Prime Planetary Directive, but even among human leadership, there was an undeniable sense of grim pride. Once again, a human had represented their species' resolve to the alien cosmos. By any means necessary, humanity would endure, and anything that threatened their existence or their core values would suffer unimaginable consequences. Such was the terrifying strength and skill that had been bred into the human soul over the millennia. Those who forgot that did so at their own peril. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, please be sure to leave it a like and subscribe too, if you don't want to miss our next one. Feel free to check out any of our other videos too.